Yeah, hello. Mark Capola here
Hello.
with another Valhalla Movement podcast. And today we've got a guest that's inspired me at least. And it's just been incredible to see this Facebook page and this website called Sustainable Man grow before my eyes. We've got the founder, Chris, who is, leading the charge when it comes to the online world and the online memes and conversation surrounding sustainability. So, man, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today.
I'm really excited to be here, Mark. And I'm just as enthralled with the work that you're doing with Valhalla Movement and the way that you're able to connect this virtual world with the real world outside, and that is so inspiring to me. So I'm thrilled to be here and talk to you.
Yeah, clearly the feeling is mutual, I'm sure. So for those who are listening who've never heard of Sustainable Man, you can go and check the massive Facebook page that has been kind of amounting to 1.2 or some odd million people at this point, the amount of people that are liking that Facebook page, or check out sustainableman.org. There's tons of great content. They make remix videos. You might have seen probably their most viral video, I'm assuming, How Wolves Change Rivers. And that's a video that was kind of made by you guys and remixed together with, I don't know, images that you guys took from the web and different, speeches and different audio that was taken from, who was the speaker on that? Actually?
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you a little bit about that video. So what we do is we take talks that we find on the internet that are usually just a talking head, and we like to combine those, portions of those talks with images and video images and music to kind of make that story come to life. So when you're just hearing the words from somebody, words are abstractions of reality. They're not the actual reality. They're not the actual experience of reality. So when you hear a story being told in words, you can have some level of understanding, but you don't get a level of understanding through your feelings and your body. And that's what you get when you see an image. So if I just said the word beaver to you, it may not invoke any kind of emotional response. But if I showed you a clip of a beaver swimming around, making a dam, doing what a beaver does, now I can connect in a way beyond just the word beaver to this actual living being that is doing things in the world. And I can now have a relationship somewhat to that. And obviously video images aren't the same as going out into nature and experiencing the real beaver, but they get you closer. And in our world where we can't have access, or many of us don't have access to nature and the ability to go out there, these video images are the next best thing.
Absolutely.
So this video was taken from a TED Talk from George Monbiot, who gave a TED Talk called Rewilding, or Why We Should Rewild the World. And he gave a few examples. So this is one little excerpt from that TED Talk where he gave this story. He told this story about how the wolves changed when they were reintroduced to Yellowstone. They changed the nature of the park. It started the cascading effects of reintroducing these wolves. Eventually changed the flow of the rivers due to all of the other subsequent effects of changing the wolf, of reintroducing the wolf. So for example, when you reintroduce the wolves, then they start killing some of the deer. And so what the deer do is they stop grazing in certain areas of the park because they know that they'll be able to be trapped there by the wolves. So those areas start to regenerate with the shrubs and everything, which bring back the birds and other animals that have now more to eat. And so eventually, through this cascading effects of reintroducing the wolves, what happens is that the course of the rivers start changing because the banks aren't collapsing into the rivers because there's more trees there. And it's just, the video basically shows you this whole sequence of events that get you there. And what it does is it provides us with an experience that shows us how everything is interconnected. This is one of the memes of Sustainable Man and the news story is that everything is connected. When you do one thing to part of the world, it affects everything else. And so, you can we live in a kind of linear world where we run linear systems, and where there's a direct cause and a direct effect, and that's the way we like to think of how the world works. But the truth is, it's more of a dynamic system, and there are many causes and many effects to every action. And so this video kind of brings some light to that and allows us to have an experience that shows us how that works, rather than just intellectually understanding that idea.
Absolutely. And I mean, you bring up an important part of what you're doing and what you're involved in doing, which is changing that meme. What's amazing about like these websites like Sustainable Man or even Valhalla, or just tons of websites and Facebook pages out there, okay, whether they're in the field of sustainability or not, what we're really doing is shaping the conversations that we have, right? So that's what the internet is effectively doing, is like, what's circulating around the web is basically kind of like the sixth sense of what the world is thinking about generally. And in certain areas, we think about different things, right? Like Miley Cyrus does something at some award show or whatever it is, and now all of a sudden everyone's talking about it, and she's going to dominate the news for a while. And I find it so important, and this is why it's one of Valhalla's missions, and I'm assuming it's part of one of your missions, is that having high-quality content, having like not just a talking head and not just the video, but really taking the talking head, which is saying something really important, and adding in those visual aspects that bring us closer to nature, as you pointed out, that make it more effective. That's why millions of people saw that video that you guys made, versus had you just shared the TED Talk, or had you just shared some of the images of wolves doing stuff or a little blog about it. It doesn't have that same impact. And so I find it so amazing that there's people like you out there just doing this. Like, it's incredible.
Well, thank you. But I think it's important to recognize that the world that we live in is really built on a story. We like to think that, we make all of our decisions based on the best evidence or the best data or the most rational approach, but that just isn't true. What we do is we have stories that help us to interpret the world that we live in. So, for example, when you're walking down the street, how do you know that why aren't you just smelling every flower that you walk by? Why aren't you just, like looking around in amazement at like every structure that is built and wondering, why is that here? What is that purpose? The reason why we don't have to do that is because we've built ourselves a story that says that, okay, you don't need to smell that flower because you've probably smelled one before, or it's just not important to you in terms of what you're doing in this moment. Maybe you're on your way to work and you're late. So that's the story that you have in your mind. So you're going to bypass that flower and you're not going to take in your surroundings because your story says that's not important. But if your story changed and, you had a different story that said that, wow, look, everything's alive around me and it's all so fascinating and it's all doing all of these different things, all seemingly by itself. Now I'm all of a sudden interested in those things because I have a story that talks about that, that gives importance to that. And if you think about it, animals, they don't really have stories. They're kind of just experiencing the world. So that's why you see, like, if you have a cat or something, you put them in a new environment and he's going to walk around and sniff everything in that room. He's going to find out every little thing and he's going to be like totally amazed at this new environment. But if we walk into a new house, we're like, oh, okay, there's the kitchen, there's the restroom, there's the living room. I know what the couch is for. I sit on the couch.
We understand.
It's like we have a story that says that this couch, we understand the circumstances of that story.
Understood.
So when we become aware that we live in stories, it's important for us to choose the story that's aligned with what we want, how we want to be in the world and who we want to be in the world. And if right now the society is living in a story that says that everything is separate. You are not connected to the world. In fact, you are completely separated from the world. Your existence ends at your skin, your body. There's nothing outside of that. And everyone's out to self-maximize. Everyone is out to get as much as they can for themselves. And somehow that's supposed to lead to some ideal outcome. And I think we're witnessing now that as population grows and you have all of these people trying to get as much as they can of the earth for themselves, it's not working out so well.
Absolutely.
Whereas that
story
story might have been okay, you know, a couple hundred years ago. Yeah.
That
We're
story is
realizing
getting
that we're
really
going to need to
old and
share this world.
overtold. Absolutely. And
and it's collapsing, you know, a lot of the structures around us, you know, like our economic system is failing, our food systems, our medical systems, these things aren't working anymore. And we're not able to really believe that this story is going to take us to, I mean, one of the facets of the old story is that it says it's going to, we're going to become the lords and masters of nature, that we'll understand everything about nature and we'll be able to control it and do it arrange it exactly how we want. And climate change is kind of like that ringing bell that says, actually, you can't. You know,
you might be able to shape it on the short term, but you're gonna feel the effects on the long term. Absolutely. I mean, like, you know, you say the word story, and in Valhalla's mission, like, one of our first lines is that we are a group and a tribe of storytellers. Like, that's how we describe ourselves. Is one of the things that we do is going out there and telling the stories of not only what we're doing, but what other amazing people like you are doing. For example, like, this is why we host these podcasts. Is, you know, this podcast is nothing if it's just me talking. Then I'm just another guy ranting on the internet. But if I'm telling and having a conversation with you, we're shaping the story. We're putting a face to the story, which is also important. You know, every leader or every movement always has like leaders within it. And it can have numerous leaders. It can have one leader. And that's what kind of moves the story forward, right? Like, if we heard the story of Rosa Parks, but we didn't picture her on that bus, or we didn't picture her as being this black woman who was being discriminated against, and we just kind of heard the story about this woman who said she didn't want to go to the back of the bus, that story would have never been told. But it's because of the story and how that changed everyone else's view of the story and how that changed history, that's why we celebrate Rosa Parks, right? The same, I believe, is happening today. Like that. The people who we celebrate from the yesteryear or from history or from distant or recent history is constantly happening in the present today. I mean, we have the opportunity to change the world's story, and we have to do it through, in my opinion, two really very important, distinct, but at the same time, completely synergetic avenues, which is the online realm, which is like, okay, where are people ingesting or digesting this story? Like, where are they getting it, and how are they sourcing these stories, and where are they going for this information? And this, at this point, you know, TV is definitely one of the places, but online is obviously the biggest place. And we're doing, both of us collectively are doing a lot on that front, right? Trying to get the conversation going, trying to piece together bits and pieces of information that people are sharing from around the web and put it onto platforms that have more and more people kind of congregate on and share the story. And then the second one is the actual doing of the stuff, right? Like, us as content producers or as people telling the story and kind of, you know, publishing it online, we're nothing without seeing, like, you know, the Earthship out there, or somebody who built that tiny house, or the person who actually introduced the wolves into this park that actually changed these rivers in the first place. Like, both of them are super important. It's as important to take action as it is to tell the story. And we have to recognize the power of both. And that's something that I had never seen it that way personally until I realized, like, I used to always call it marketing. I'm like, well, everything starts with marketing. Like, if we start by marketing and then we do a little bit of action and then we market the action that we took and then we do a little bit more action and we market, and we just kind of go back and forth and just run from one end of, you know, like a game of Pong, or we just run from one end of the field to the other end of the field, we're going to be scoring goals on both nets, and then we're going to have a real balance of what is going to propel us forward and what is really going to start a movement. And that was the goal, right? We called it Valhalla Movement because we wanted it to be a movement of not only the story and not just us talking, but also us doing and actively trying and exploring. And
yeah,
I think
one of the things actually that, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
No, I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say that, you know, one of the things that sets this time apart from, you know, a few decades ago, you know, sometimes I talk to some of the, you know, old hippies from the 60s, and they say, yeah, you know, we tried to change the world, but it didn't really work out. And, you know, there's nothing you can do. And they're kind of cynical now. But what I tell them is like, well, you didn't have the internet in the 60s. Exactly. What you had to deal with was complete control over the airwaves. You had television, radio, and it was all centralized. So the only message that was coming out was that of, you know, corporate society.
Story.
You couldn't, I mean, maybe if you were a good writer or something, you could try to get your opinion piece in the newspaper, but that was pretty much the only avenue you had to tell your own story. Today, that's been totally disintermediated. Now, anybody can go online and hear the thoughts of any person around the world almost. And now we're exposed to many, many, many more types of ideas than we ever were in the past. And we can actually choose the story that resonates with us. And that's something that's brand new. That's something that, you know, really has never happened in the history of the world. And it to me, that's what, you know, I think you and I are seizing on that opportunity to help you to use that tool to help change the voice of humanity, to be one that's more compassionate, more empathetic, more cognizant of the knowledge that we are all brothers and sisters, and we're all here to help one another.
Absolutely. And I mean,
that sure sounds a whole lot better than the one where we're trying to destroy the world and get as much for ourselves. I mean, I think anybody can see that now.
Definitely. They definitely see that. And the other thing is that what they didn't see before, they are now seeing today, in the sense that most people are good people. Okay? The person who's working a 9-to-5, the person who just has a job and is just trying to make it by, was born into the system, and they're just doing what they know best about what they can do. And I can't blame any of those people.
Right.
Look, I'm not living in the eco-houses yet. I'm slowly but surely getting there. I'm not like the ultimate sustainable man, if you will. I'm not. And neither are you, and neither is 99.9% of the world. Like, we're born into the system. We're bred with this was the right path, and I guess it kind of was for certain avenues, and there was many beautiful things that came out of it, including things like the internet, including tons of technologies, including also sustainable technologies. Things like solar panels and all these things are all bred out of this system, which allowed for economic growth and for kind of technological advancement in many ways. And the question is, how do we now restore more balance? I think that's really what it is. That maybe back in the day, we were kind of too far on one side of the scale, and we just didn't have enough technology. And then slowly but surely, we now figured out some economic systems that kind of work for more people, and it kind of created more wealth, and the technology really advanced. And now we have the best kind of communication we've ever had in the world. We also have the most distraction, though, and there's positives and negatives to both of them. But the whole thing, for me anyway, is like, how do we just kind of not go all the way back here? This is not what we're talking about when we talk about sustainability, but really, how do we have the happy medium where we can coexist with nature, coexist with our environment, and keep it in mind as a factor of our decisions? Like, a factor of our decisions right now is like, how can we make more money, or how can we employ more people, or how can we grow the industry, or how can we take over a competitor, or whatever it is. Okay, and some are more altruistic than others, but the reality is that we're not really truthfully weighing the pros and cons of the environment in our decisions, and we really, really, really absolutely need to at this point.
You know, balance is definitely one of the core pillars, I think, of the new story. If you think about our old story, one of the concepts within the old story is this idea that we must sacrifice everything towards this one good. So on a systemic level, we sacrifice almost everything towards GDP growth, the gross domestic product growth, the growth of the economy. This is where we are sacrificing our time to spend with our families, so that we are working more than we ever have in the history of humanity. I mean, that's true. You would think that we were working much less than it would be for the hunter-gatherer. But the truth is, we work far more hours than they ever did. You'd think after 5,000 years of progress of civilization, we would be working less, not more. But that's not the case. So that also shows you that there's something off with that old story. But, you know, if you think about it, we you know, in our personal lives, many of us will sacrifice our family relationships, our relationships with others, to our careers. And our career will take everything, all of our time, will take all of our energy. We come home and we're tired. We have nothing left to give to our families, because we're putting all that energy into that. Now, some people are doing that because they have to, because that's what this world has made them do in order to survive. But there are many others, who are living relatively comfortably, who are still kind of sacrificing all of their personal time, all of their family relationships, to this, to the work that they do, for whatever career, and I think that balance is the key to restoring all of those things. We do need to pay attention to our careers, but we also need to have the things, in our lives that make life worth living, which, if you think about it, who are you? You're nothing but a sum total of your relationships. You're not an individual being. You're nothing without the relationship to the air that you breathe, the food that you eat, the ground that you walk on, and the people that you interact with, who shape who you are. And we're social beings, and we can't lose sight of that.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think what people need to hear, more than anything, is that everyone I talk to some degree, kind of agrees with a lot of what I'm saying, in the sense that, I'm like, okay, well, I'm a proponent of balance. I don't want to go too far this way. I don't want to go too far that way. I believe that balance is the key. I believe that we have to take on more of a sustainable mindset and lifestyle. Like, everyone agrees with this. But the problem is that not everyone's doing it, and they just don't know how to do it. And I always tell people that the first thing that they can do is change their story, change their lifestyle for themselves. Like, people always ask us, oh, what can I do to help Valhalla? And I'm like, change yourself. Change who you are and the way you are doing things. You don't have to come to Valhalla. You don't have to help us plant a plant and pound a tire or whatever it is. Yes, it would help. We would love to have different people volunteer and be a part of it, for sure. But I mean, look, if you're all the way in Texas and we're in Montreal right now, chances are you're probably better off doing something down over there, because your town and your life and your family and your friends all need you to be a leader in your own community. And all of that, and I always give people two pieces of advice. The first thing, and it boils down to documenting what you're doing and turning around, and also at the same time doing more of that stuff. Adopt something that you're going to do from a sustainable standpoint. So maybe it's I'm going to install a compost bin in my house. So instead of throwing all my garbage into the garbage, I'm going to keep my banana peels, and I'm going to put in my compost bin. Then take a picture of it, put it on Instagram, let your friends know that you did it. Teach your mom what composting is like, or tell your brother or sister how this also works, okay? And get them on board of composting their stuff too in your household. Boom. On Instagram, somebody sees that you did that. They're like, oh, cool. I want to do that too. Boom. They set it up. Boom, 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 boom. It consistently goes. And the story changes.
That's right.
Now, I spoke to you previously, so I kind of know a little bit of your story. But I'm sure that some of your own fans on Sustainable Man, and I know the people listening, would love to know, how are you changing your story? Where was your story before Sustainable Man? How did you get to this point?
Sure.
And why are you doing it? And what's the goal? Where are you going? What are you working on next? We've talked about this, but go into it. Lead us where you were and to where you're going.
Sure. Let's see. How can I do this in the most efficient way? So, I kind of grew up as most people did in America as a consumer. I was bought and sold into the whole economic system. Maybe not bought and sold, but more like this is presented with, and then, never had the freedom, or at least didn't feel the freedom to choose my own path. For a long time, I was living my life according to the expectations of my parents and society, and not really even thinking about, what do I really want? That question is not something I think that we really ask, because when we're young, we're asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? And you'll say something like, I want to be a painter, or you want to train horses or something, but then someone says, no, but what are you going to do to make a living? And it's like, oh, I don't get to do whatever I want. I have to do something to make a living. And I think we all experience that living in this society. And I think that limits us. It limits that question of asking ourselves, what do I really want? Because we don't get to have what we really want. We have to do something that makes a living. And so I was doing that for a long time. I got a job after college. I got a job at Accenture. So I was doing IT consulting for about 10 years. But about halfway through, I started questioning things, being like, is this all there really is? Is there anything else besides this job that I'm going to be doing day in, day out for the rest of my life, sacrificing all of my time to 60 hours a week? That's most of my waking life I'm giving to this job. And is that all there is? And so at about the same time, I started becoming aware of some of the sustainability issues like peak oil and, water crises and all the other crises that we're facing. And I said, whoa, if I'm not doing anything about this, and I know that my job does nothing to address these issues, then I'm kind of wasting my time here on this world. But even though I had that epiphany after about 5 or 6 years, it took me another 3 years to actually leave the job.
Wow.
Actually, I was lucky because I finally got laid off in 2009. They kind of cleared the whole bench, the consulting bench. Anyone who wasn't staffed on a project, they just let go, and I was part of that. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
It allowed me to go and start asking myself, okay, Chris, you're 30 years old now. You haven't asked yourself once, what do you want to do with your life? Now you can ask yourself that question. And so I did. And I said, okay, well, I want to do something about sustainability. So of course, I'm still trapped in the old paradigm of thinking. So, I had no experience in sustainability. So I think, well, gosh, in order for me to get a job doing something in sustainability, I'll have to go back to school and get a degree. And so I actually did that. I went and joined a Columbia's master's program in sustainability management. And so I started doing that for about that was about a 1.5-year program. And halfway through that program, I watched a movie called Zeitgeist Movement, Moving Forward, the Zeitgeist Movement, Moving Forward. And that was the first time that I learned about how the money system actually works. That money is created out of thin air, and it's loaned into existence, and it's always under a compulsion to grow, meaning we can't not grow our economy, because if we don't, we'll hit recession and depression. And if we keep growing our economy, that means consuming more and more of the planet. So we're at a paradox here. And so I bring this up in my sustainability management school, and they say, oh, it looks like the communist in the room just stood up. And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? I'm just starting to question economic growth, and now I'm a communist. And so, and this is supposed to be sustainability school. And so at that point, I realized that they don't really know what sustainability is either. And I was going to have to try to figure this out on my own. And so that's really when I created Sustainable Man as a place to discuss these issues, to find out the root reasons why we aren't sustainable as a civilization and a culture. And then we started creating some videos and things to our first one was called Too Much Stuff. And it was kind of like a PSA, looking at all of the stuff that we have and saying, hey, why don't we just share this stuff instead of each of us owning our own hammer, that we never use? Why can't we just have a hammer in the tool library and go grab it and then return it when we're done with it, and we could do that for almost everything. We've got all these machines in our houses. I mean, how many people are using their washer and dryer right now?
You're like a carbon copy.
Expensive machines.
Literally, you're like a carbon copy of my way of thinking. The example that I kind of came to this realization with was actually when I was always tasked with cutting the grass, right? Back at home, like as the average, male living in suburbia. My job, other than was passed down to me from my father, was to cut the grass. And I hated it. I was like, why do we have goddamn grass that consistently grows, that nobody cares about? Like, we have to constantly water this stuff. We have to constantly cut it. And then we always have to constantly deal with the fact that we have to gas it up and or fix the goddamn lawnmower. And I would freak out. Like, I hated it. I was just like, this is the worst job ever. Like, why is it that...
There's a great book you should check out. It's called Lawn People. The Lawn People.
Oh, man.
And it talks about our culture, about how we're all these lawn people. And there's a story that I read there about how this family was pouring chemicals on their lawn. And their dog would go out and run on the lawn and get all these blisters and terrible things on their feet, So instead of stopping to use the chemicals, what they do is they bought shoes for their dog. You know, it's just funny
that's
how
our
important
society.
it is to have this, you know, this because you know, because that lawn is part of this story,
Yep.
story of the American dream with the white picket fence and the lawn and the family and the two cars. And
Absolutely.
so in our minds we're thinking that's success, you know, and so we have to have that perfect lawn, you know, to keep playing out that story.
Absolutely. I've had this
And
conversation
you think
with.
about lawn,
I was just gonna say I had
lawn
this
grass is
conversation
actually
with.
the #1 crop in America.
Absolutely. That, and
Sorry,
this is the whole
go
thing is
ahead.
that
Yeah, it's the #1 crop.
it's crazy because like I had this exact conversation with Daniel Vitalis, who I don't know if you know who Daniel Vitalis is. You must have come across his work on and doing some of your posts on
Probably.
Sustainable Man or whatever. But he is really a large proponent of the rewilding movement, and he's actually one of kind of the leaders in it at this
Mm-hmm.
point. Other than I guess the guy who had done the TED talk that you guys sourced for your video,
Mm-hmm.
but you should definitely check him out if you haven't. But we basically boiled down all of the world's problems into grass, like how when we started growing grass and we had abundance, that we had like started agriculture, like grass was the biggest like thing, that it was like one of the, you know, the family of grasses that we started growing that allowed us to be sedentary, and that's where we began to be able to consume because it had more and more free time. Even though that is a myth that they weren't working as much as before, but we were settling, and when we were settling we were hoarding because we didn't have to travel with all of this stuff anymore, and that's where kind of, you know, all the things that we have today have sprung out of. But the other
Sure.
thing is that big lawns are almost like a big show of wealth. It's amazing because the the fact that we have this land that we don't need to grow our food on because we live such a cushy life that we can go to the grocery store and buy all our food is almost like this way of our displaying our wealth. And then kings used to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all the people back in the day would have to farm their land to survive for their family, and then they would give a portion of that food to the king. But the king would have the most amount of land. He would own all the land, first of all, but he would have the most amount of land for his castle, let's say. But all of it was not farmed. It was all just there for show and for prettiness, and part of that dream, right? It's now adopted into the America dream, but its reality is that it was kind of the dream around the world of just having a big castle
Mm-hmm.
kind of house, you know, the beautiful family and all, and these frivolous lawns. But back to the problem, I was like, well, what's incredible is that I'm cutting the grass, and my neighbor down over there that I can see is also cutting the grass right now. And we both have like subpar lawnmowers. Like we both have like, or the standard lawnmower. Whereas I know there's a lawnmower that's better that would make me be able to cut the grass faster. And I thought this one thought while cutting the grass, I was so furious. I was like, oh, I'm out there in the blistering heat and cutting the grass. And I was just like, why can't why can't we get all our neighbors together? We'll buy the best lawnmower with all our collective money. We'll all sell our old lawnmowers. We'll buy the best lawnmower with our new money, the money that we collected. And then we'll all take turns cutting each other's grass once a week. Like once a week, we'll
Yeah.
cut the grass in the same, so your grass will still be cut in the same way that your parents want it to or whatever that everyone wants. But we all have the best lawnmower
Yeah.
because the reality is he's only using his lawnmower for 1 hour a week. And so is that guy, and so is that guy, and so is that guy. And there's enough hours in the entire week that all of us would have the chance to cut our grass if we all bought the best lawnmower. And we would all save time too. Save time and money. And then
That's
that
right.
concept started expanding. I'm like, well, wait a second. We all have ladders. Why do we all need ladders? Like, how often do we ever use a ladder? Like once or twice a year to clean the windows, maybe? Maybe. We all have like cars. We all have like just everything. Every tool in the book. We all have microwaves. We all have ovens. Washers and
Sure.
dryers was a great example. And it's like, there are ways that we can combine our efforts into putting it in one place and just leaving that open to the community.
Yeah. Now, of course, this takes a different story in order to get there, right?
And a
Because
different mindset.
if
and
we have a
different
story where
set of
we're all
goals.
separate and we all have our separate things and our own separate houses and our own separate, then of course, you know, how many people even know the names of their neighbors anymore? That's something that is totally anathema to human civilization and going back thousands of years. Everyone always knew their neighbors. In fact, as recently as even 100 years ago, before television and all these things, people used to sit on their porches and they'd watch the neighborhood. You know, there's an old movie called The Burbs from the 80s where they sit on their porch and they just watch their neighborhood, and that's like the entertainment, you know, and that's the way it used to be. And we didn't have to pay for these things. And that's another thing is, you know, most of the things that we used to do for each other, you know, were gift-based relationships. You know, we would sing together and that was entertainment. We didn't pay each other. We didn't pay Miley Cyrus for her music, you know, to be able to listen to it. We had more intimate relationships with one another and we needed each other because we were the source of our entertainment. We were the source of our security. You know, go back a few more 100 years and there was no insurance. Your insurance was your goodwill to the community. So if your barn burned down, if you were one that helped others when their barn burned down, then they're going to come and help you too, because that's the way a community works.
A gift economy. And
this is the way that humans have lived on this planet for since the inception, except for the last 50, 100 years or so. And since then, we've become more separated, more isolated, and less happy, to be honest. Even though we have more wealth, you know, more quote unquote wealth in terms of money, we have less community. And that leaves us isolated and feeling, one, like the only way to satisfy our desires for connection is to buy more stuff. Because you don't have connections to human beings. So the only thing, you know, our society says to do is, oh, you're feeling sad, you're feeling lonely. Here, come buy my product, you know, and marketing preys on these vacancies within us, saying, hey, buy this and you'll be able to satisfy this emotional need that you have,
which is
but
ironic.
It doesn't work. You know, it might work. Yeah, it might work for a short period of time. And that's why we keep doing it, because it says, oh yeah, good, I feel this and I feel this connection. You know, when you consume something, you buy something and it works for a little while and then it doesn't anymore. And that vacancy comes back. And so that's what they're preying on. That's what consumerism is preying on. And as soon as we start filling that void ourselves with community, with people that need us, with people that we need, then all of a sudden your desire to buy more stuff goes away. I mean, if you think about it, remember a time when maybe you were driving along the road with one of your best friends and you had that perfect tune on and you just felt connected to the world in some really, I mean, we've all had moments of connection because
it could be,
you know,
there's a rave or a concert. It could be
wherever it was, you know, and you felt connected to the people around you in a way that was very real. Visceral even. What did you want in that moment? Did you need anything else? Did you want like you know, a new car or did you want to go shopping for a new outfit? I mean, did any of that stuff matter in that moment? And the truth is no. When we feel connected, we don't need any of that stuff. When we feel disconnected, then that's when we buy more things, you know, because we think, so, you know, what story are we telling? And you know, you go back to that and you realize that, okay, if I'm connected, I don't need all this stuff. And all of a sudden I'm happy and I don't need all this stuff. And now I don't have to work maybe so many hours because I don't need this big apartment to hold all my stuff, you know? And right now we're in the process of my wife and I of getting rid of literally everything we own except for a few clothes. And then our goal is to kind of head out and do like little short-term rentals in places so that we can experience more of the world and meet more people. And, you know, since I'm doing most of my work online, you know, it's pretty easy to do that. So, that's one way that we're trying to change our lifestyle is by kind of getting rid of all of our stuff and kind of traveling around that way.
Going back, it's ironic because we're going back to like, we want to get away from the sedentary lifestyle and we want to go back to the nomadic, which is so
I mean,
hilarious.
If you're not going for stuff, what are you going for? You know, what are you going for? You're going for experience, right? You want
and
different
knowledge.
Experience. Yeah, exactly. That's why we're here on this planet, is to have as many different experiences as we can, you know, before we go. And what are we doing? We're forcing ourselves to have the same experience over and over and over again, the same route to work, the same job, the same things we do every day, the same routines, the same restaurants, you know, all of those things.
Yeah. And you know, there's definitely a cycle of life. And there's this pattern that we are observing, and it's changing because it's funny how we talked about or you said marketing fills the void of whatever we want to consume. Now, what's really interesting, and this is where I love, and I want to kind of shift into what are some of your future plans, but
Sure.
before we go there, I want to say that what's really happening and why Sustainable Man, in my opinion, is growing and why Valhalla is catching on is the timing is right, because now we have this void of connection and environment and nature that we are inherently feeling. Like, we have all of these sicknesses and problems and things going on in the world, and be it global warming or be it water shortages that are going to be coming, or food crises or droughts or whatever it is, okay, whatever problem that might be arising in your area or in your town or globally, is we know where it's all sourced from. Like, we all just know that if, like, we spent more time outside and we planted more trees than we cut down, that it would make sense. And that if we, like, consumed less and kind of appreciated more, that we would be happier. Every single person knows this, like, to some degree, okay? Whether they practice it is a completely different story, because we feel trapped in this pattern. And we're stuck in our stories, really, more now than anything, or we feel helpless in our story, which is, how do we, as individuals, stop global warming? Or how do we, like, it's not our fault that global warming is happening necessarily, but at the exact same time, the reality is that it is our fault. We have to change our lifestyle today, even though we were born into it, even though global warming was happening way before we were born because of all these decisions that were made in the past. Mm-hmm. If we choose to enact or to be aloof to it, or to say, hell, it's not my problem, and be immature about owning up to our role within that issue, then we have a bigger problem. We have to be part of the story.
Well, this is a good segue, actually. Yeah. This is a good segue. Part of the old story that says that you're a separate individual, of course, then that makes us feel insignificant. If if the only way I have to affect the world is through my own force, of which I have very limited amount, then there's certainly not much I can do, the old story says. But now, if you believe in a different story, that one that says that every action that we take has many other consequences, not just one. We live in a dynamic world. A butterfly effect is a good example. A butterfly flaps its wings, and it creates, through a cascading effect, a hurricane in the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
Would it have happened had the butterfly not flapped its wings?
Or
and so there's all these different things.
Or wolves get introduced to an area,
right.
And then all
so
of a
part
sudden...
of this new wolves get introduced to the area, exactly. So part of the news story is really feeling that we are connected to the whole world, and so that when I do anything in the world, it has an impact. And so one of the things. So what I'm doing now and moving forward is one of the things is I have we always have this community that's been interacting on Facebook for a long time. Facebook scares me a little bit in that they could just, kill your page if they wanted to. There's nothing that prevents them from doing that. And and so what I want to do is actually move, what are we going to do? Okay, we're all talking about these issues, but what are we going to do about it? And so I'm starting a new group, a new organization that called Sustainable Human. And this organization is different from any other organizational model that I have seen out there. And it has two main features. The first is transparency. So it does ask to become a member of Sustainable Human. We ask that you give a recurring donation of $1, at least $1 per month. But $1 per month is pretty small. Mm-hmm. And all of the money that does get generated is put into an account that I don't touch. It doesn't go to fund my travels or do anything, or my meals or anything. It goes into a fund that is tracked transparently online. So everybody knows exactly how much money we have, how much money is coming in next month. And we can then begin to make decisions as a group about how to allocate those funds towards to reach our goals. Mm-hmm. So the second piece of the organization is participation. So with your dollar, if you think about it, if you're giving to a traditional nonprofit, you give a certain amount of money and you don't know where it goes. You might read in the paper later that the CEO made $200,000 last year. And you're like, whoa, I thought I was funding wolf conservation, not this guy's $200,000 salary, And so the idea is that it is a gift-based model, and everybody gets to decide. We vote on where that money is allocated. So if we wanted to use some of that money to provide a gift to somebody who has been giving their time and expertise to Sustainable Human, then we would decide to do that. But everything is gift based. So not only that, are you given this opportunity to vote on, say, what remixes we create next, or what projects we seed fund, or any of those things. But you also are invited to participate in becoming and volunteering your time. Whether that is volunteering your time to help us to provide your thoughts on the remix that's currently in development, as we'll open up that process and allow you to see it as it's being produced so that you can incorporate your ideas to it. Whether that is by becoming a translator so that you can translate our remixes into different languages for us. Whether that is a promoter so that you could go out and find channels that want to share our content, so that we can find, so that we can have this content reach as many people as possible. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can help out, whether, if you're a web programmer, you want to help us build the website, if you want to, a graphic designer, you want to create memes for Sustainable Human. There's so many of these people that are doing this type of stuff, kind of maybe segregated into different pages, different Facebook pages and things. There's a lot of people doing this, but I'd love to try to get people contributing. And really, Sustainable Human is not my organization. It belongs to anybody who wants to participate in it. And there's a couple of unique features of it. One, Sustainable Human does not sell anything. It does not have any products for sale. It gives away everything that it produces for free to humanity. So we're all coming together and collectively giving a gift to everybody else through Sustainable Human. And the other two things are, we don't advertise, we don't accept advertising, we're not going to get any money for advertising, and we don't accept sponsorships. So Coca-Cola cannot sponsor Sustainable Human and give us $100,000 so that they can improve their image and tarnish ours at the same time. So that doesn't happen. It's a pure organization, in that it doesn't have anything to sell, and it gives away everything for free.
And so, the goal is that members join. Who are these members? Anybody can join?
Anybody can join. Anybody that feels like they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's what this is. That's why I joined it, is because I realized, I can only have so much of an impact by myself. But with others, collaborating together, we all have unique gifts, and, my gifts are not, for certain things, but other people have those gifts. And together we kind of create this community that can find all of these different talents and synthesize them to, if you think about it, you look at Google, like an organization like Google, the amazing things they're able to accomplish together that no one can do on their own. It's the same kind of principle, except, we're not doing this because we're doing it for a living. We're doing it because we feel like this is what the world needs.
Yep.
And we're all giving to that, including myself and everybody else that gives to the group. And the goal is to change the story. That's the ultimate goal, is to change the story to offer an alternative, to say, look, we could keep going like this. I'm not going to force you to do anything, but here's an alternative. And you're free to choose it if you want to. And I feel like most people will want to choose this alternative because it feels good. It feels better.
Absolutely. When you're talking to me about this, I see the exact same consistency between what Valhalla has become, which is a tribe of a community we're a group of storytellers. We go out there, and with our tools and our skills, we promote, we create content, we make videos, we do all of these things, and then we try and also do on-the-ground action through permaculture and eco-construction and all that kind of stuff to change the conversation, to change the story. And we're trying to be as purist as we possibly can in many ways. Right now on our website, we have no advertising. We don't plan on accepting any advertising, really. What we're looking for more is partnerships, right? How can we work with Sustainable Human, for example, to collaborate? How can we promote you and you promote us, so that because the reality is, we're not really promoting each other, we're just promoting the story. How do we actively get on some of the same pages on this story, right? You talked about, you used the exact wording that we talk about all the time, which is unique gifts. People have their unique gifts. And we created a definition. We tried to create like a meme called freedom culture, which is Valhalla is out to proliferate freedom culture, which is the ability for every individual to propagate and embrace their unique gifts to the world, and like literally share their unique, their unique things that they want to give to the world in the most sustainably minded lifestyle possible, right? Like, and we understand that it's a transition. Not everyone who is going to join this movement is going to be already the 100% sustainable man or human. But the goal is that we're trying to change together and doing it as a community. And that is Valhalla. That's why we called it a movement. It's so, to me, it's the exact same thing, and I love it. And I wish and I hope that we can get on some of the same pages of using some of these same words and things to popularize it.
And, and just so, I can talk to you and anybody else who's doing something similar right now and how they can engage with Sustainable Human is, we have this Facebook page that has a pretty good following. And one of the things we'd like to do is to expand the type of content that we're sharing on there. And what that does is it taps into the specific knowledge that you're developing in permaculture and community building. But, sustainability, the way I see it, encompasses literally every topic in the world. So, there's also the angle of, of the introspective self in terms of discovering who we are and understanding who we are. And that's a big piece of sustainability as well. And then there's, there's the technical aspects, and then there's, understanding these concepts of interconnection, and then, there's urban farming, there's technology, there's all these different pieces. And so if you are an organization or, a group that focuses on one of these specific areas, I would love to talk to you and incorporate, what it is that you have to say, this real knowledge. I'm kind of a generalist. I know a little bit about everything, but I don't know a lot about anything. And that's where I want to get some of these people who do know a lot more about specific things to invite them to help it come and share their content with Sustainable Human. And that way helps you and helps us at the same time. So
I think
I'd really love Sustainable Man to be a page that, has literally the best and most dynamic and most broad content related to sustainability on the net. It's really supposed to be a high level, broad enough topic so that you can find almost anything there related to sustainability.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into like cross sharing. I think that's like a whole movement of the sustainability story that needs to kind of begin happening. Is that, like, for example, there are Reddit subgroups that have like all the sustainability stuff that come from numerous websites in some of the subreddits, right? And the same needs to apply to some of our websites. Like, how can we take content, like how can Valhalla take content from Sustainable Human or Sustainable Man and then kind of repost it, put where it came from, and then say, hey, you want more of this content? Here's like subscribe to them, and you can stay and subscribe to us, and you'll get, and this will start to change everything that you see. And as you see it, you get inspired, right? Like, we see something on Facebook that's really cool, or on Pinterest, and now we're like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna put that in my house, or I'm gonna do that in my lawn, or I'm gonna do that. Like, I'm gonna make this in my garden, or I'm gonna try and plant this plant next to the other plant because this person told me. So the more we are surrounding ourselves with the knowledge, the more we actively play a part in the community by like donating our time, and like you said, our time, some of our money, some of our effort, some of our real care, the more that we think in a sustainable mindset. And then the real crux of all of it is the more we take action in all of these facets and put all of the things that we're learning in all of this together, that's the recipe for change. And I've been saying this forever. I made an hour-long documentary called Recipe for Change that covers sustainability, community, knowledge, and action.
Gotta check that out.
Yeah, and combining all of those is like the thing. And I wrap it, the way I did it is I did the documentary filming the entire progression of this one town in southern Argentina. It's all the way at the end of the world. It's where they cast off to go to Antarctica. And we built an Earthship there with the Earthship Biotexture team. And so I document the entire build and show how Earthships are just part of the solution. It's not the overall solution, but they do address the four main ingredients in the recipe for change, which is, again, sustainability, community, knowledge, and action. And those swirl around online and offline to make really all of this change. And we just need to come together and not see that, like, okay, sustainable man or sustainable human is its own thing and Valhalla is its own thing. No, they're the exact same
Well,
thing.
it's no longer a competitive model. You know,
Exactly.
that's the thing is we're kind of, the old story says that, oh my God, Valhalla, they're kind of similar. They're kind of similar to what I do. We're actually competitors. You know, that's what the old story would
It
say.
really
But the
would
new
be,
story
yeah.
has nothing, isn't like that at all. We're saying, oh, you do what I do? Let's work together. How do we work together to expand what we're trying to accomplish? Because it's
Exactly.
no longer about us as individuals. It's about creating a sustainable community for the whole world to live in. And that's a different type of mindset.
And these working groups have proven to work very effectively in the past too. I mean, like, we talk about the Great Depression. Okay, how did we get out of the Great Depression? Well, a lot of things surrounded working groups. Like, we created little communities where small areas of people would basically start doing a job, even though they all had no jobs. All the jobs went away, like the economy crashed. They just started banding together and creating almost like a business, and they kind of did it as a work exchange amongst themselves, and that allowed them to, like, prop themselves back up into our more stable reality. And then slowly but surely, all of those things that they had done
Yeah.
together turned into these businesses, and all of a sudden, the economy was revitalized. Now, that
And
collaboration model came to life, or back to life again, and then it slowly but surely deteriorated back into the greediness of the world, right? Which comes at the fact that we live in a very big world, and we're only able to have this human connection with about 150 people. So studies would show, right? I can't remember the name of the guy who studied it. I've read this study numerous times. I never remember his name,
that's
but
okay.
the idea is that we are only really gonna we're having a hard time connecting with lots of people, and we're only really caring about 150 people within our tribe and our immediate surroundings. But what's really interesting is we get to choose those 150 people. I tell people this all the time. We get to choose who we're surrounding ourselves with. And if we're going to
It's
surround
true.
ourselves with people who are in the old story, well, then guess what? A lot of our decisions and a lot of our fears and a lot of the things that we do are going to be shaped by that old story. But if you change who you're hanging out with, if you change your environment, your community, your tribe, and you now join this tribe, and you realize that this tribe might be getting bigger and bigger and bigger, whether it be through the guise of, or the branding of sustainable human, or the guise of Valhalla, or the guise of anything, whether it be a sport or anything, like being a fan of something. If you join that tribe and you commit to it, you become part of it. You help it out in any way possible through your social reach, by telling more people about it, through your funds, by helping fund something or donating to it, or with your time, through your effort, and through actually doing something for it, and giving it a boost. That's exactly how we can change the world, and it's happening. Green Seed is all about all three of those things that I just mentioned, but all of that is just swirling around, and I really believe that this is going to change. I really, really, really do.
I do too. I do too. I'm very hopeful about it, and I think one of those things that 150 person tribe thing is, it's kind of like been the traditional model, or kind of that was about the size of human groups that
Yeah.
worked, but and the reason why they worked is because you could actually know everybody, the whole group could know everyone, so you knew who was trustworthy perhaps and maybe who wasn't in certain areas. And so our reputations were known. That's the thing. And then when we get into this mass society, we can hide our reputations from people we just meet.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really knows our history, and we can kind of present whoever we want to present. And that creates distrust, and even within ourselves, sometimes we create personas within ourselves we're not even aware of, where we act certain ways in certain situations and other ways in other situations.
Absolutely.
And back in the day, that wasn't true. You were just yourself. You were yourself, and that's and you were conditioned by that social group. But I think where we're moving to with the internet is we're able to now track our reputation. So if you look at your, if you're an eBay seller, you're selling things there, you get rated on your interactions. And if you have poor interactions, then people aren't going to do business with you. And so now, and if you look at the sharing websites, all of them are based on reputation. And so the way you interact with people can now be tracked. And now that I meet you, I can now look you up online and say, hey, how have other people liked interacting with Mark?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, looks like everybody that has interacted with him says he's a swell guy. Okay, well, now I feel like I can trust Mark a little bit more than I would just somebody I didn't know anything about.
That's true.
And I think that this is something that's kind of coming along, and this is how we expand that 150 person tribe to a much, much larger tribe, where even though I haven't met you yet, I still know you because I can see how everyone else has interacted with you.
Absolutely. So that being said, I want to shamelessly plug how people can connect to your tribe. How can people hear more about what you're doing, more about sustainable man? Where should they go? Like where should they sign up? These people who are listening to this and who listen to this all the way to the end are clearly interested in it. So go take it away.
Yep. Sure. So if you're interested in becoming a part of Sustainable Human, you can go to our website right now. That is at human.sustainableman.org. And so you can go there, sign up, look for our ways to participate, email me, get in contact. We'll all work together to create, that more beautiful world that we know is possible. And if you're just interested in kind of looking at what we're doing, you can check out Sustainable Man on Facebook or on my website on sustainableman.org, and you can explore videos and memes and ideas in my blogs. I have a bunch of thoughts that I've written about up there that are a little bit different take than most people. So feel free to check that out as well. But I really look forward to seeing your participation in Sustainable Human, because I feel like this is an organization that can be trusted and one that you can be a part of. And so it can really grow to be, thousands, if not tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people who want to create a more beautiful world for all of us.
I mean, the reason I laughed is because you said a world that we know is possible in our hearts or whatever, and that's the verbiage that we first started Valhalla with, is like, what are we doing? People would ask us, and we're like, well, we're creating the world that we know is possible in our hearts today. We used to say that like all the time. I still say it, obviously, but it just, man, it's amazing how people from like hours away from us can be on that same wavelength, and I feel connected in more ways than one. And I'm sure everyone who's listening to this does too. So yeah, please go and visit that. If you guys want any of these links, they're all going to be in the description. Guys, please don't forget, like, one of the best things you guys can do is subscribe, rate this podcast, comment, like, share. Any of those things are super powerful. I know Chris can attest to this. Like, it's amazing. Clicking can actually be very, very big for us. And it helps us in more ways than one. So if you guys can give this a thumbs up, share it, download it on iTunes, subscribe, anything, whatever it is, it all helps. And consider taking action in your own life. We spoke about that too. It's not all about just supporting us. Do it for you too. Like, this is really about you. This is about you adopting the sustainable lifestyle. And it's about us coming together as a community and surrounding ourselves in that tribe together and working together. And so, Chris, man, I thank you so much for your time. And
thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
All right.
We'll do it again. Guys.